You mentioned there were 5 on the department.
Yes. Actually, so 6, so Aaron, Ismania, Blanche's position, Julia.
So we did the Cos Beach thing today, that was freezing out there, so like.
How did I get something that would?
Will dressing.
And I'm particularly
It went amazing, so great. Yes, it's gonna be fantastic.
They have designed new.
We'll have a great property there with a, that we
Yeah,
can
that's
use to.
As I've spoken to them, I've told what they call it, what's up. I'm like, yeah, not to worry.
Right, we want to get this started so that
I thought she was coming around.
It's a very embarrassing story. At the ceremony today, I went up to Paola and I said, "Can I get some more rubber balls from you?"
The work session in the Apple City Council for Thursday, February 15th will begin at 3:10. This time, will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thanks. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Rob Savage is in the group, he said, so. All right, Mr. City Attorney, first item, please.
Yes, sir. The first item is presentation, ID 2424, update on the Department of Planning and Zoning changes and priorities. Presenter, Planning and Zoning Director, Jakubiak.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great.
Yeah, and it's really good to be here. And thank you for hiring me. I still have a lot of gratitude about that. I still like coming to work every day. And yeah, I'm still in the honeymoon phase, I guess.
We're just afraid you're going to leave us.
Well, it was me that asked for this session, and I thank you for accommodating me. I wanted to discuss the changes that are underway in the department and the priorities that we have at the staff level in the planning department. I also want to answer any questions you have about what we're doing and seek your input on a number of things as well. And lastly, I wanted to, this may not be the perfect comparison, but I liken you to the chairman and the members of the board of directors for our department. And so I want to report to you, and I want to be accountable to you. I want to establish the proper relationship and the balance. So there it is. If you have anything that as a body you'd like us to focus on and prioritize, please let me know. And if this works out and it's a nice way to spend an afternoon, we could do it again next year, right? Or whenever you'd want to to meet with me. As you can see, I've decided to forego a formal presentation, no PowerPoint. I thought we'd just talk. And there's a lot of things I want to cover, and maybe we use the entire time available for the work session, maybe not. But I wanted to encourage you to ask questions at any time, interrupt me with comments, call BS if you think it's necessary, and let's keep this at a conversational level if we can. But I do want to cover a lot of things with you, and I am seeking your input. First, I want to describe a little bit about the department itself, because it's worth noting for everybody's shared understanding what we're actually composed of and what we're doing. I didn't know that planning and zoning did all the things it does when I took this job. In fact, I'm still understanding. It was just last week we got the assignment to be responsible for enforcing snow removal throughout the entire city. That's something new, but now it's something that planning and zoning will do. So we have 36 employees. We have one contract employee, so a total of 37 employees right now. As you know, we guide the city's building and physical development. And we move from the broad policy level, like land use, environmental conservation, down to the specific building permit level, code compliance level. A door should be placed here rather than there. Access should be free and clear for emergency personnel. It's really, we span the whole gamut from detailed to broad policy level. We administer all or parts of Title 15, harbors and waterfront areas, Title 17, building and construction, Title 20, subdivisions, 21, planning and zoning, and 22, adequate public facilities. And we administer a lot of other parts of other codes throughout the entire city. We administer state and federal grants. We administer the Federal Community Development Block Grant. We administer and run the city's Housing Trust Fund, Residential Rehabilitation Fund, the Moderately Priced Housing Unit Fund, tree planting, tree maintenance, tree inspections, the Critical Area Fee and Lieu Fund. All these activities are extensive and quite involved. It is amazing to me that we're able to do all this, but we do it. All that stuff goes on a daily basis within our department. And you'd be interested to know that or probably know that we staff a bunch of different boards and commissions, several of which have real administrative authority set forth in state law. And so we have the Planning Commission, the Historic District Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Board of Building Appeals. Then we have the Board of Port Wardens. All of those 5 bodies have administrative decision-making authority, and they're run like official quasi-judicial bodies. Then there are 3 advisory committees: the Maritime Advisory Board, the Heritage Commission, and the Affordable Housing and Community Equity Commission. Our staffs these committees. We're there, we take notes, with the exception of the Maritime Advisory Board, where we support it. Our economic development folks support it, but we're not managing it like we are the others. As you know, we write the comprehensive plan and the small area plans and detailed plans throughout the city, review all development projects, review and approve all building permits, issue permits for new construction and rehab buildings, conduct building and site inspections, and issue rental license renewals. We're part of the city's disaster recovery program, so we're called into action at 3 o'clock in the morning when a storm is coming in. We're preparing for recovery as soon as the storm is known about. We're working to prepare for recovery. We manage the floodplain management regulations. We have roles to play in the Americans with Disabilities Act and the federal Fair Housing Acts throughout the city. And we coordinate with agencies all over the state of Maryland, Critical Area Commission, FEMA, the Arundel Community Development Services Commission, Anne Arundel County Workforce Development Program, State Highway Administration, MDE, Corps of Engineers. All those agencies are closely connected to what we do, and we're daily in contact with at least 1 or 2 of them. And you'd be interested to know that in the last 6 months alone, and I haven't been here quite 6 months, but I wanted to give you a measure of what I've experienced. We've issued 1,624 building-related permits with an estimated value of $44,605,000. And if this computed to the actual assessed value increases, and there is a relationship there, I don't know if it's exactly 1-to-1, but if we assume that 44 million was accurate and results in assessed tax, an assessed value, in 6 months alone, we've increased the property tax revenue of the city by $329,000. That's how much development churns within the city of this size. And it's not just development, it's individuals making improvements to their own houses. When they invest in an addition to their house, they're investing in the city's tax base, and that raises the tax revenue for the city that can be deployed elsewhere. So we've also collected permit fees in the amount of $1.6 million. Collected permit-related, we've done permit-related inspections totaling 4,248. We've approved license renewals at 3,500 license renewals. That's rental license renewals. We've done 4,197 rental license inspections, and we've collected $358,300 in rental license fees over the past 6 months. So generally, you can double those numbers for a year, but things fluctuate. There are some major development projects in the works that are going through the approval process. Once they hit the books, that these values would be much higher. But and these fees don't even include the plan review fees and special exception fees and the historic district commission fees and administrative adjustments and all the other stuff, which could probably total well over $1 million in 6 months. I guess one point I want to make is that I think this department generates far more in fee revenue than it actually incurs in expenses. So the budget that you see will probably be a bit lower than the actual revenue generated from the department. So that's sort of a summary of the department and its role within the city. I wanted to get into a little bit about the concerns that you shared with me before I was hired, actually. I met with each of you, either phone call, we met with lunch with some council members, and here in the office, the mayor's office with some others. And I've also had the opportunity to talk with many people in the development community, the building community, engineers, architects, citizens, representatives of civic associations, and I've compiled a list of concerns that they've shared. And the concerns are generally what I might consider customer service. And they're very important. In light of the bigger work this department does, they seem relatively small, just customer service. But they're not small. They're really important because they are about trust and our sense of trust in, or the community's sense of trust in us. And so I want to begin repairing that sense of trust and improving our processes as to the extent that we can. In fact, I already have, and I want to share some things with you. But first, I want to share some things that I learned. First was the trust issue. Some parts of the city, some neighborhoods feel at any given time that the planning department has prioritized the interest of applicants or developers over the public interest, or over the interest of individual neighborhoods. And this is not an uncommon concern or complaint in planning and zoning, because sometimes you have to faithfully apply the law, and when you do, residents realize that the law actually allows for something they didn't anticipate, and it changes the trust equation. All of a sudden, the department is doing something that they didn't expect, and that sense of change and can really be difficult. But it's still a fundamental concern, and I don't want to dismiss it, and we're taking efforts to repair that. I've learned that there are serious concerns with customer service generally, and at the most basic level, people have had difficulties just entering the permit application process. Just filing a permit can be very difficult. And we, until recently, really haven't been there to answer the phone and say, how can I help you? People have called and have just not gotten the feedback they needed. We now devote a lot of time every single day with customer service. We essentially run a customer service function, just like a major corporation would. We shouldn't have to necessarily do that, but the software that we use, EnerGov, is just not customized yet enough to make it easy for applicants. We took a year to figure out ourselves how to do it, but it's still difficult for the average applicant to figure out how to log on, register, and submit an application, then upload plans. And to prove it to me, the staff took me through an exercise where I was a regular citizen going through the process. And at each point, I don't know where to go here. I was getting frustrated. And they were like, yeah, that's why we spend 8 a.m. to 12 noon on the phone with people, 8:30. So it's something we're working on. There are concerns that relatively simple projects take too long or have taken too long to obtain permits. And for example, it's said that the average time from submittal of an application to getting a permit to build a house in Eastport is 2.5 years. And that's just really difficult to stomach.
Too fast.
Or it may be too fast for some people. For larger projects, I've learned that there is a backlog of projects that is simply not moving. I learned that really quickly when I started in the office. They're sitting on the desks of key staff people. And it's not because they're simply too busy, but that's part of it. It's also because things are really complicated. The number of people that put their eyes on any development plan across multiple departments within the city government would astound you. It's not just a planning and zoning function. It's a planning and zoning that issues the permits, that takes in the project, but the process involves other departments, and we all have to work together as a team. So it does take a long time. It actually reminds me of a little bit of a joke about city planning. City planners love historic preservation. We certainly do here. We also love to take our time on reviewing new development plans for buildings. And sometimes we take so much time that the buildings become historic before they're built. So we want to rectify that. The zoning code compliance has been an issue. I've heard that. And plan compliance. So when we go out and when the Planning Commission approves a project, we send our inspectors. They go out and inspect a building. They make sure the building meets all the codes, and they step away. But we've not done inspections of the site to make sure that the sidewalk is exactly where it is, that the easement has been platted to the water, that there's not a gate that's been built across the sidewalk where a gate wasn't proposed. There are a whole host of compliance issues that are not necessarily code compliance, but they're compliance with approved plans that are slipping through the cracks. I've learned that key decision-making staff sometimes do not respond, sometimes didn't return calls or emails, sometimes even fail to extend basic professional courtesy, and that's something we've all had to reckon with in our department. I don't want to make too much of this, but it is something that happens in an agency, and we're trying to fix that. In fact, the developers and architects often bear the brunt of that. They're ready to go. They have the investment. They've got the issues to meet, and when we're being unresponsive, it really slows things down and puts a real burden on projects that otherwise would be quite acceptable within a city. It's like what they say, what do developers and heart surgeons have in common? They both tend to work closely with unresponsive people. So we want to repair that relationship a little bit. But for me, the most important thing is once we sort these things out is that we as a department work to our full potential. And if you look at the resumes and talk with the people in our department and their work experiences, we have some of the most talented people employed anywhere in Annapolis. It's quite impressive. Look at our economic development staff. These folks could work anywhere in corporate America, and they're working here in our department. We have landscape architects, trained, professional, licensed, who've been working for decades. We have really engineer, we have an engineer. I mean, we have really critically important staff, and we have capabilities. But until we resolve these kind of customer service things and how we interact with the public, we're always going to be a little slow. So these are the things I want to address in the coming year. So one way that we're addressing things could be grouped under the title of inspections and permits, because that's where most of the general public interact with us in terms of getting a permit, or following an application, calling about a complaint, being on the wrong side of a complaint, having their property inspected, and having permits delayed or stuck in the process. So the first thing we've done already is to elevate the role of our permits administrator. You may know Lakita Wimbley. She's been with the city for about a decade now. Her position essentially is a clerical position, though. It's a A10 in the pay scale. But her title is permits administrator. She serves essentially an essential function in city government. And yet she's kind of buried within the bureaucracy of permits and inspections. So we've sort of brought her out of that and elevated her in importance. And I hope if the classification and code study works out, we will be giving her a promotion because the work she's doing now, which is so important to keeping the permits flowing, deserves a salary on par with the other professionals in our office. So we're moving her to a middle management position, bringing her into our senior staff meetings, making her part of the team. And Lakita has instituted a weekly expedited permit processing program. So what that means is that every week, we just started the first one last week, and so it happened this week, we're expediting a handful of permits, the ones we can do. So we did 5 permits this week. All the average person knows that filed an application is that they got the permit in 2 days rather than waiting 30 days. And so what we've done is Lakita's identified the permits that can be done quickly, like a new fence or a deck or a kitchen remodel, things that don't really require a lot of time and shouldn't be on the stack of development projects. We're taking them out, and she's identified the key players that have to review that, set the clock. We need it tomorrow. So the reviewers know every Wednesday they're on the clock and they know that they have to deliver when Lakita tells them to deliver. So we're doing that, and it worked really well this week. And so we're going to do that until we get that number up really high, and we're just doing all the small things quickly. So the average citizen can just get their permit and it's almost like Alderman O'Neill kind of laid out for me this experience of like walk-in same-day permit. It's our sort of approach to a walk-in same-day permit, but done through the mechanism of the EnerGov system where everything's digitized now. So with being able to answer the phone, help people with the application, and then able to deliver their permit within 1 day, or actually 2 days effectively, I think we're going to shore up that customer service issue, I hope. We've eliminated what has been called a first in and first out policy. You may not know this, but the Inspections and Permits Division had a policy that was established years ago that when the building reviewer reviewed a set of plans and provided comments and requested revisions, those plans would go out to the applicant. And then when the applicant responded and made the revisions, they would come back into the city, but they would be put on top of the pile. And the building reviewer would be reviewing from the bottom up. So it would be another 30, 45 days before the reviewer got to even though the revisions only took maybe 10 minutes or so to confirm. Did the architect address my concerns? Yes or no? And so we were penalizing people for being responsive to our comments. So we changed that. Now we have a more dynamic, real-time response. The building plans reviewer opens the day, Monday, sees what permits came in, makes his judgment about what things they can do right away, does them, and the bigger projects that take more time get their own individual attention. So we're able to be more responsive. And that was something that's a response to the criticisms we received from the architectural community across the board. More than one architect said, how can you do this? We're being responsive, and yet we have to wait another 30 days, 45 days, just so that you can confirm we drew the line in the proper location or something like that. Customer service training for plan review and inspectors. This is a big deal. Our inspectors interact with the public. We often know that's where customer service is most important, when a person's in someone's home doing inspections. So we want to, across the board, improve our customer service at that scale. So I'm asking for money in the budget for this fiscal budget to allow all of our inspectors to go through real good training in customer service. We've instituted a citywide rental license renewal set of improvements. And this work came about through coordination with Melissa Maddox Evans at HACA, because her projects have particularly challenging issues with the city's inspection process. We didn't want to do anything customized for that group of properties, but we wanted to do something that made sense citywide. So now we notify everyone in the city. Well, we are notifying now. We're in the process of doing that. You have 120 days from the time of the notice to the expiration of your permit. So it gives another additional 30 days for someone to respond, to pay their fee within 30 days. Then it provides another 60 days, actually 90 days, for the applicant to go through the process of conducting inspections by the staff, then repairing things, making changes that the inspection staff sees. What we saw happening was that this inspection staff would go out, they would find an inspections issue, so they would withhold the renewal. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking, and sometimes the properties or the units would lose their license before the inspections were completed. And once they did that, the applicant or the owners couldn't collect rent. They lost tenants. It became very difficult. And this is particularly difficult for the city's residents that live in the subsidized housing projects within the city, because they were the least able to deal with the displacement that results if they have to be moved out of their units. The Housing Authority has been, and the leadership there has been really informative and helpful to me in understanding the implications of how a rigid inspections program can have downstream consequences. So we've made some changes, and they'll apply citywide. So everybody now gets 120-day notice. And we are also making some other changes too about calling the property managers before we show up to do an inspection, making sure we inform them before we condemn a unit. These sort of simple things, but in practice it's difficult because there's, as I mentioned, they're doing so many inspections. So if they're in Eastport doing an inspection of Ross Arnett's house and they get a call saying, you know, we've got we have an emergency over at one of the HACA properties, they will naturally just go do that. They won't go back to the office and wait to schedules, and they'll naturally do that. So they want to resolve it right away. So there was a period of time where they weren't making the phone calls to the HACA representatives and let them know we're on our way. We want to let you know that this is a concern. There's something. If we do that, we realize that there's always a backstory to these critical emergency inspections. And sometimes it's better to coordinate with the property manager than to come in and condemn a unit without that coordination. We have found that there's a number of issues where if we advise people ahead of time, they could submit documents that comport with our expectations. And this is particularly within the professional community, civil engineers and architects. We don't need code language. We don't need an amendment of the ordinance. Sometimes we just need to explain what process you take to estimate the construction value of a project, because the construction value of the project determines how much fees you pay. So there's an incentive on the private sector to downplay the estimate. There's an incentive, if you will, on our side to get an accurate, or maybe even better than accurate estimate. So we're going to stipulate what rules to follow in estimating projects, so we don't have people playing this game. And it has happened that people game the system like this, and then it sets us back because it's incumbent upon us to be to faithfully apply this city standard. So that give and take adds a lot of time to the process. So we're going to insist that people follow standards to estimate their construction value. So we get a fairness across the board. The last thing I want to mention on my list with respect to inspections and permits is that we're proposing to hire a second architectural plans reviewer. And we'd like to make that a budget. It's already in our proposed budget proposal. We are perennially behind. We have a backlog of permits, and nothing that we can do internally can resolve that backlog with our current staff, and we've tried. So about 17% of the building reviews are delayed, substantially delayed, because we simply don't have enough manpower to review the building plans. And we should say that the plans are difficult and complicated. They're not your standalone single-family house or fast food restaurant. These are infill developments, the rehab of historic buildings, mixed-use developments with residential, commercial in the same building. They're very complicated to design, and they're very complicated to review, and they take time. If it were simply a suburban type of model of development every time, it'd be easy. But we're in a different phase of city's development, and we need more manpower in that particular part of our operation. So those are some of the changes we're addressing on customer service with inspections and permits. I can take a break now if you want, and if you have any questions about those or comments before I go on to some other areas.
Alderman O'Neill had his hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been looking at this, and it seems that there's a blue box missing.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the MIMBY review box.
and why?
NIMBY.
Oh,
I bring that up to be funny, but I want to tell you quickly about an experience that I just had with a project on Dave Stokes' old property, the farm property there. And the applicant was coming in with their pre-application review.
right.
And I think it should have been really videographed, because I think it illustrates the kind of problem that planning staff are faced with. The project itself is very modest. I think it's 7 new homes, a street. It's not going to come out onto Bay Ridge. The owner is doing everything by right, so there's no special exceptions and so forth. And some in this room have labeled me a NIMBY. And I think I kind of am to some extent, but it made me feel guilty about being a NIMBY, because the reaction of the constituents, and they were all legitimate, passionate reactions, were, why does it have to be so many houses? You're going to add all kinds of traffic and noise, and what kind of planting are you doing? Is the stormwater going to come off of your project onto our yard? And these are all legitimate questions, but it really speaks to the very beginning of your opening, which is the trust factor. And I think it is probably a problem. You know more about this than I, because you have worked with a lot of communities, but it is, I think, an endemic problem. And I do think it's one of the things that we have to be empathetic to our planning staff about, because they're kind of the linchpin between the developer that wants to get it in, get it done, get it out, and the community that is walking around stiff-legged and very suspicious. I think that this is something that your customer service training is going to help, but I think it's just something that we really need to much more explicitly recognize as a natural tension. I tell people the reason Crystal Spring took so long, the reason that the Eastport Shopping Center is taking so long, isn't because of the planning staff. It's because of us. It's because of the community and the community concerns. And I don't know, maybe you have some magic dust that you can sprinkle that will make that an easier process, but it is real. And it is something that I think we as stewards of the city and protectors of our staff as well as of our code need to figure out are there some better things that we can do to make that a more comfortable process, I guess is the way I would state it. So I have another couple of questions, but I wanted to throw that on the table because it is almost like a natural human reaction when there's something new showing up near you or next to you. You see the specter of how horrible it can be, and you don't necessarily have, and I thought, by the way, the applicant was excellent. He actually did the thing twice, and he was, what I hear you saying is such, so-and-so. Like one person said, why can't you just turn this property into a park?
Right.
After we spend the money. But he said, I hear what you've said, and I will note it in my report, but I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
I need to make money on this. So anyway, I'll just throw that out for comment.
For conversation, just to throw this out in response to that is, if we celebrated the accomplishments of the planning staff more, I think it would help. Does anyone who travels to the city or lives here think Acton's Landing is a horrible project or somehow a problem? And yet it was thought to be a major concern back then. But and you might note, Tom Smith led the sort of, as a staff person representing the city, the kind of reimagining of that whole area after the hospital was moving.
Bill Kardash did,
Yeah, right.
but he's the only one.
Yeah, but think about that. And what we thought in our staff is it would be great if we had an aerial photograph of that project to talk about, to sort of claim it as a success of good planning that happened within our office. And there are other examples of that too that the community generally needs to know about. And we want to have more of an open door in our office so that people come to our office and see these images of success that have happened over the years. And I think that will, on some level it won't, but I think generally it will help. It's just part of the overall building of trust.
Right.
We are here for you, and we're also here for the future. We're building something for the long term, and we're applying standards that are done in a way that's human, not just bureaucratic and thoughtless.
Yeah. So I like the plan compliance emphasis now, and again, I have some live examples of it in Ward 8, and it also led to some of the aura of mistrust. And so I think that's a very important new addition and emphasis.
Good, yeah, I want to talk about that topic itself separately. Not that project, but zoning compliance and plan compliance. I'd like to spend a couple minutes talking about that.
And then the only other thing I would note, and this is something that maybe the council can take up, but it is correct that you're dealing with Title 15, 17, 20, 21, and 22. And that takes up a lot of the Rules Committee time. After gunfire, land use issues, I think, fill the Capitol with all kinds of citizens' concerns and comments. The interesting thing is while the Planning Commission is primarily responsible for Title 21, they do approve some things in Title 20. we really need, I think, a broader purview there. As you said, port wardens get into Title 15, but it really is land use, and it's all part of our overall thing, including access to the water.
Yeah.
And so it seems like we have a commission that could actually have a broader, and therefore, I would hope, more comprehensive review of land use policies and how things are being put in place. So those were some quick notes that I took. I do want to go back to the pre-app process. I think that's finally working the way we intended it. It gave the citizens early on in the project voice. They expressed a whole multitude of positions, some of which were understandable, but not necessarily reasonable,
Right.
and so forth. So I think that, and I will take pride for that piece of legislative change, I think that is a process that can help ease some of the, what is that game, whack-a-mole, that your staff are involved. Anyway, thank you for the report. Thank you for your very quick perception of kind of the things that are going on. And of course, thank you for being responsive to those perceptions.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here. I'm not done yet either. I have some more. If I have the time, there's more things I'd like to go through.
Alderman Finlayson was next, sir.
Yes, and I'll be very quick. One question and one comment. A question about the fees. You mentioned the various fees that we've collected over the last year.
Yeah.
Were they segregated out between short-term rentals and other fees? That's just because we're always dealing with short-term rentals.
Yeah, we can break that out separately. It's combined in the
That total was
that
combined.
was combined for rental. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I particularly like, and I know you're not finished, your customer service approach.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish that the city would, as a whole, take that same approach. We know, and I'm the employee advocate always, but we know that in our departments, many people are overworked. I know back in 08, 09, we eliminated all the front desk people for budget purposes. And they were the people who really exhibited good community service or customer service.
Right.
And we got rid of those positions.
Yeah.
And so those responsibilities now fall on people who have really other jobs.
Yeah.
And so you are, looks like going to set an example for other departments to show that customer service is important in what we do.
Do you know who it is in our office? It's Maria Brown that is driving that. She is absolutely fantastic. And her staff are just great. In fact, they're nominating one of the staff to county for the city employee of the month just for her role in customer service. But Lakita Wimbley, our permits administrator, she is in coordination with Julian now to have a video on the city's webpage for permit that says basically, welcome to the permit. If this is the process, it might seem complicated, but I'm here with you. If you have any trouble, call me, pick up the phone, or send me an email. So we're really kind of reaching out to the technology that we have. We want to deploy it for that purpose. So we just want to put a friendly face on. It would be nice if every time someone got a permit, there was a smiley face from or the mayor's face. Like, you're approved. So that's where we're headed.
So,
Yeah.
but I just want to say thank you on that. Are you going to fill in names so that we know who's responsible for what?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. But I'm going to talk about this chart. It's gonna, this afternoon in a couple of minutes. I'll get to
Okay.
that. Yep.
All right. Thank you. That's-
Thank you. Alderman Tierney?
Yeah, I know you have other subjects, so I'll try to be brief. Not really in order of priority here, but as far as the current website on permit, and it seems very good. Was that done under your tenure? And do you want? It sounds like you're going to improve that. So, maybe have what I think of sort of as a chat line, right? Yeah. Karma's idea.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So Yeah, we're going to improve that, and that's one thing that John Manassa is thinking through already. He and Maria are working together to simplify that particular part of our website, but we actually want to redesign the entire website. Just so much text. We want to get to the heart of what we do. And internally, we're working on our own mission statement and vision for our office, and what kind of department we want to be, what we want to signal to the world. And that's going to drive what we put on the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you have just discussed cannot be underestimated. I know since I've been here, I think every budget I've asked for, I think it was a scary term, re-engineering of the permit process. I think that money went elsewhere, but you have done what we were assuming a consultant could come in and do and find and evaluate where was the weak link in the process. And it sounds like you are doing that, and you're making steps to be more efficient. Pardon me if I ask, sort of in the weeds question, because it's probably my background, but in that industry, you have to work by deadlines. Your life is governed by deadlines. Who implements or what deadlines are they under, and how do you communicate them?
Yeah.
Is that still an ongoing?
That's a really good question. So Lakita is empowered to set the deadlines based on the workflow. And for complicated projects, there's more time set. For smaller projects, less time set. And then for expedited review, it's just 2 days or 3 days or whatever the case may be, depending on when she announces it. But she takes in the permit application and can set the time, the due date. The due date is the date for this is the issue. This is sort of how you run into operational issues. The due date in the EnerGov system has been understood by staff as the date that they have to have their comments done, and then it's shared and then synthesized magically and submitted as a permit. The due date is read by the public or the citizen as the due date they're going to get their permit. And the two don't match up at all. So it's a communication issue. All along, the average citizen they see into the system, they see a due date, and they think, why haven't I gotten my permit? So every time they've received their permit late. Yeah. Everybody receives their permit late because they perceive that due date to be. So that's a communication issue and a software issue that we're working to resolve. But Lakita sets the date under my guidance and John Manassa's guidance, and Maria, who actually is involved in that too. But she sets a date, and the staff then has to deliver their comments by a certain date in time so that there can be a day or so of synthesizing comments, and we can get that permit out to that person by the due date.
In that vein, one observation, and I know I've been out of the industry for a while, but it requires a lot of collaboration, interdiscipline coordination. And I don't come to your office very often, but there's a plan table, and I don't see people doing that. Yeah. I don't know what your policy is, and it's your management. It's what you want, but are they working from home, or do you think it would be more efficient if they were? The plan reviewers working in person together? I mean, what's your observation?
Actually, that happens quite frequently.
Okay.
But less so than it used to, because with the city's tracking and management software, this EnerGov system, everything has to be uploaded into digital form.
Yeah.
So everyone looks at it on their own computer. Okay. And literally the current planning staff, well, I'll talk about in a moment, they have their meetings remotely, even though they're in the same office, because they're all working on their own step. Because you could draw on the plans, and you have to have that screen open in order to communicate. So it's been a change, and it's taken a year or so to settle in. But what I think as a team, universally, what we want to see is much more collaboration and engagement, and the kind of we have a vision of the office being much more of a studio where people can come
Yeah,
in, meet
that
with us,
kind of-
roll out the
yeah.
plans, like you imagine an engineering studio, architecture studio.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed. We want to get back to that, especially for the complicated projects that take that. And we're increasingly having meetings now. The first thing I did was to require that all the meetings be in person. So we did that, and then to respectfully request that all of our stat commissions and boards actually meet in person. And now that's all in place. So we're starting to know each other again and like each other again.
Yeah.
And it's a real family over there. And so when we do have, like with the city dock plan, we had the city dock plans out on the big table in the
Right.
center room. And multiple times throughout any given day, we're all around the table
Yeah.
pointing out what, so it's good.
That's great. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just going to add one thing, just because you said it, but it glossed over it. So those plans are digital within the system.
Yeah.
But everyone's actually working off of the same file. So you might have 4 different people reviewing a plan. They can actually see each other's comments on the
Yeah.
file.
Yeah.
So even when they're not in the same room, they will actually see each other's comments.
Yeah. No, I know. I like I said, I've been out of the industry for 10 years now, and, we'd yell across the room, like, who's got the mechanical box outs and that kind of thing. So anyways, my last question is, in sort of for, all of us that are going to be reviewing the budget, your fees, go into the general fund and then allocated, but you must be looking at, like, what is your return on your staff, and consequently, I can afford a new inspector. I can afford a new plan reviewer because of that. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah, I haven't done that quantitative assessment. Frankly, because our budget was due on December 31st and it was a rush to get it done.
Yeah.
But my gut told me we were right in that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And my gut also tells me the planning staff over decades has been understaffed, under-resourced relative to the size and the growing part of the city. The staff is extremely efficient for a city this size. But the things that I'm recommending in the budget are just to plug holes and get us to a stable footing. So that we can be proactive and act like a planning department rather than reactive and just running from one emergency to the other. So I'd like to get to that.
Yes, thanks, I'm done. Please.
Thank you. Alderman Neal.
Thank you very much. Just 2 questions. One question, and we kind of hit on it, and you a little bit touched upon it.
Yeah.
But when somebody puts in a permit, it would be great. One of the things that I get the most questions on is, I put my permit in last week, why haven't I heard anything? So it would be great if they could get that automatic response that says, your project timeline is this, approximately 3 to 4 months, approximately 2.5 years if you're building a house.
Yeah.
To set that expectation at the front of the of the process would be so helpful, because almost everybody I talk to, they're calling me to say, well, I put this in, especially in rental applications, and not so much in the short-term rentals, but
Yeah.
in rental applications and some of those smaller ones would be helpful.
Right. Got it. With the typical permits, if you're doing a building permit, you do get a due date, a date where you can expect to get your permit. Of course, as I mentioned, internally, that's always been a date where we have to finish our work. So there's always a lag time between that and the actual issuance of permit. But in the rental field, no, you're right. So, good point.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my other question is if we could just touch again a little bit on the short-term rental units, rental licenses. There's one person in your office that takes care of those?
Right.
Yes.
Do we need more?
Apparently so.
Well,
I think I got the message that there were 191 applications, but new license,
yeah.
25 new licenses or something. There seems to be a big difference between licensed rental units and unlicensed rental units. And it sounds like perhaps we need more staff in those areas.
Honestly, you got me on that one. I don't have an answer for it. I'll have to get back to you.
I'm not trying to get you. I'm just trying to.
I know
figure
that
out
we got a
how-
flood when the idea or the proposal for a moratorium on short-term rentals was made public. We had a rush of applicants coming through. And that may in fact be part of the issue. Let me check into that.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
All right, we can
Okay,
continue. Thank you.
Sure, so if I can continue on, yeah.
Yes, Ross? Yep.
And I think this is something that I would say for the city writ large, but also for us as council members. I think we need some kind of a tickler file to keep track of reports that we legislate, we mandate, like annual reports for short-term rentals, which we have not gotten, and an annual report on the maritime, the changes because of the maritime legislation. And so I'm trying to figure out a way, because we're trying to make policy, and what we need from you and your staff professionals is not just data, but more importantly, information, so that we know how to look at, for example, short-term rentals. We got some interesting thing from Alderman Schandelmeyer at the last meeting, saying the number of short-term rental buildings has gone up, but the number of rental days has gone down. And that's interesting data, but what does it translate into in terms of policy formulation?
Right.
It means there's more buildings that are housing these kinds of operations. So if there's less days, that actually, in the minds of some, would be a complaint. That means that that former neighborhood building is dark for a lot of the time of the year. And so how do we grapple with that kind of thing when we're trying to make policy decisions, or more importantly, really respond to all of the people that we have coming to us and are expressing concerns, which are also really complaints. So,
Sure.
I think that there's a lot of things where we pass legislation and we call for reports, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Some of that is because some of your staff are overburdened.
Yeah.
And so we don't really get those reports.
Yeah. Yeah, that one is on me, actually. And the other part where we're letting you down is kind of falling on me too, and that's getting feedback to you on legislation that you're considering in your committees. And I've recognized this, and I just cannot get the time yet to deal with it because I'm dealing with some other issues, and we don't have the staff resources. We literally don't have the staff to do this. We do have the reports on the maritime done, and I'm not sure why you don't have it, but it's been done for quite some time. So maybe we just haven't issued them. It might be something that's fell through the cracks, but they're done. But yeah, that, and then the ordinance amendments and the review of ordinance amendments. There are two areas that, despite all these other improvements, still are dogging us that I've got to work on. And so I've gotten to some bad news faster in the presentation than I wanted to, but I wanted to share that with you. There's still room for improvement in our operations.
Can I while we're on that, just quickly though, on the host compliance, is there an annual report they give you that you could share with us?
I don't know, actually. I don't know.
There was some,
We got a response to an MPIA request that has one point in time. And as you know, one point in time doesn't allow you to look at trends. And not only that, when you say report, I'm not sure you and I are using the same definition of the word report. A data dump is not a report.
Yeah.
And we're relying on your staff professionals to tell us what they as professionals, think the numbers mean.
Yeah.
But we deal a lot with trends, not point in time.
Right.
And so we really need more than one point. In fact, we need a continuous stream
Sure.
of data. We were supposed to get, and we did get one report from host compliance, which I think was for February of 2021, I believe, and then nothing. And then this MPIA response was for a point in time in 2023, I think. I'm not even sure the rest of the council has seen the MPIA response. I got it because one of my constituents asked for it. And that's another thing that hurts when some people get it and other people don't, kind of thing. But to me, report, what I can use from your staff is translating data into information, using their expertise to tell us what it means. And quite frankly, I would look a lot towards your staff telling us what we need to do to fix the legislation. They live it every day, and we don't. So we sit here on high with an ethereal notion of what we want to get done. And it's what's working so well with the outdoor dining is we're working with a lot of your staff and other people, and they're telling us, well, that doesn't work, or you're not going to get what you want out of that.
Sure.
And I don't think we have that kind of back and forth collegial relationship.
Right.
So, but this report to me means analysis. It's
Okay.
data that's converted into information.
Thank you. Got it. On the zoning front, we talked about zoning enforcement and zoning or in compliance with approvals. You may know Lisa Minker in our office. She's the zoning enforcement officer. Until recently, she worked in inspections and permits division, but I've moved her out of that division, and so she reports directly to me. And if you look at the organizational chart there, to the left of director, you'll see zoning administration. So that's Lisa's new position in our organization. That means that I will be directly accountable for zoning compliance and plan compliance. And what that means is that when we get applications approved by the Planning Commission, development programs, and they place conditions on the approval, I'm going to make sure that those conditions are satisfied by the developer as part of the construction and development of the site. And one way operationally we're doing this is that we're taking our 3 building inspectors and training them to actually do site inspections too. So they don't give a U&O for a building until the entire site is built according to the plan that was approved. And they have the time and they have the capacity to do that. So we don't have to bring on added staff for that. And Lisa will be in charge of managing that relationship between the inspectors and me in that. And she'll also help me with zoning interpretations. She's always been instrumental in that already. And Lisa comes now to all of our staff meetings, our senior staff meetings. We've made zoning enforcement as important as anything else within the department. Current planning. The current planning is the division that deals with major development projects, but also minor projects like the new house that deals with the Board of Appeals, plan developments. But most of the projects that raise public concern or public interest are the major development projects, infill development projects or plan developments. And as you may remember that Tom Smith, who is the chief of current planning, had proposed to retire in the late fall, but retracted that retirement and decided not to retire, at least not imminently. But faced with an imminent retirement, we had to make some organizational changes within the division just to keep things going because it looked like retirement was possible. But as it turns out, it's actually worked out quite nicely. We've adopted more of a distributed leadership model. And if you know organizational management, that's one way of managing a complex organization is that you distribute leadership control and management across the key staff rather than it being a command and control type of approach. And current planning that division is so complex with so much incoming, it's hard to be managed by one person. It just results in an overload and a shutdown because you simply cannot do everything that position has to do as one person. So, and Tom's unique skill within the city, and you can see it on the landscape. You can see it in different places if you travel through town and you see a row of buildings and they're set back at an angle that the code wouldn't normally require, but they're set back at an angle to open up the street view so you can see the building that terminates the view. You don't see these, you see these and you experience it, but you don't realize someone made that conscious decision in the planning and zoning staff to do that. And that's been Tom. He has a unique set of skills in urban design, and it's important that he communicate those to the rest of us, especially in the current planning division, before he retires. So he's more floating over the other site plan reviewers, improving their ability to understand in space what the plans are going to deliver when they're built, and taking us to the next level in terms of proactive planning. So you might know, if you read the comprehensive plan, it imagines that a lot of the parts of the community that now have vacant buildings or underutilized commercial development that are just ripe for redevelopment, the plan imagines they would be redeveloped, typically in mixed-use space or with uses that serve local communities, more green space, walkability. But those are just ideas and concepts. What we don't know is what those ideas actually mean. So if you look at the Annapolis seafood market as an example, that's topic one right now. We're trying to get a meeting on that. What does it mean when we talk about mixed-use development, walkability, and food deserts and all that? How does that, well, once we roll out the plans and put tracing paper and start applying some basic urban design elements to it, we've empowered ourselves to work with the developer to get something the community wants. But we have to do it internally. The staff has to be prepared to do planning, and that's what Tom's doing in their office now. So you talk about more of a studio, that's what's happening. So it won't be long, I'd say 6 months, you're going to see the walls plastered with concepts and ideas. So when developers come to meet with us and say, this is our plan, we say, well, here's what we're thinking. Here's what we think the comprehensive plan actually means for this corridor. And this is why these relationships between buildings and walkways and crosswalks are so important. We think this is going to be a total change in the way that Annapolis does business in terms of development, and a very cooperative, beneficial working relationship. And I think it helps address your point, Ross, too, about, development projects taking long or developing a lack of trust in the community. If we're reflecting the interest of the community and applying good planning principles, we can get more projects like Inner West Street, which came out of this office. The Acton's Landing, as I mentioned. Park Place, the staff worked night and day on Park Place, getting the developer to make changes that made that project what it is today. So that type of work needs to be done up front, and that's the whole vision. So we have a distributed leadership management style now in that division. Tom is doing more of the design work. Mike Meekins and Kim Burke are managing the office in a team sense. Drea, Alexandria, she was a contract employee, but we've brought her on full-time, so we have a full-time administrative assistant. Now she decides who gets what project because she's tracking the time that is available to each member. So they're not waiting for Tom to turn his attention to it. Instantly, when a project comes in, it's assigned to one of our reviewers in-house. We actually have 3 reviewers. One is a part-time contract employee. Soon we'll have 2 new employees, hopefully people that are new in the career who can come in, learn, and work under Tom's design guidance. And actually, people have some design experience themselves. And so we're really building the capacity of our department. And this means that we can write zoning code based on the physical realities of the spaces we're dealing with. So once we see what a project looks like conceptually, we're not going to design it in detail, but what the essence of it, we can then write the code. And we talk about form-based code. It doesn't have to be form-based code per se, like you have to build this, but we know what is best for that particular site in terms of the parameters based on the actual planning we've done. So we've informed our code writing. So it's not abstract and hopeful, it's pragmatic and realistic. And again, that means that the private development community has some real clear guidance on what it is our expectations are. So we're kind of closing the gap between what our expectations are, which is really abstract in the comp plan, and what we actually want to see delivered. And any questions about that before I go to the next step? Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
Alderman Pinell, Charles will be first, and then Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things. It sounds like to me the thread that's running through your office, from your standpoint as a director, is empowerment of the employees and staff. That's what it really sounds like, that you are truly now empowering them to take on more responsibility, to be more creative, and that sort of thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and actually, a number of the staff have got onto that and thanked me for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's true.
And that will most likely improve customer service. When you have a staff that feels a part of the team, and that they are empowered to do things even sometimes beyond what they even realize they can do, which you seem to be giving them the latitude to do, it will result in better customer service.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I want everybody to be happy who works in the department. I mean, if you're not happy with the job the way it is there something we can do to adjust it and make it better? That's the key.
And that's the best way to approach it.
Yeah.
The one other thing I want to mention, and we've talked about the form-based codes, but we won't get into that here, but we can have more discussion about that.
I put it out there just to get a reaction.
I figured you would. Thank you.
Alderman Tierney.
Quickly, to amend, to depend on what my colleague said, it also makes them feel, accountable. They're not hidden somewhere, and they're. Ross is going to like this question. In what you just discussed, how do you use the comprehensive plan?
How do we use it?
Yeah, in that context that you just,
Sure.
Is it on a shelf? Do you pull it down? Do you say, yeah, this is per, right?
Well, again, in very pragmatic ways, if you look at the comprehensive plan in the land use section, it identifies a whole suite of areas within the city that are in need of more planning, or that are likely to be targets by the private industry for redevelopment, that are just ripe for some development, or the redevelopment would introduce improvements to the streetscape or connectivity. So there's a whole list of them.
Right.
And so it's those areas that concern ourselves. We as staff need to be prepared for the eventuality that those areas would be redeveloped. And they're not going to be redeveloped in whole cloth, but piecemeal, just like the world works. One property owner wants to build something. So if we can get that property owner to build according to their overall vision, then we're putting together a plan. So that's literally how it works. We take the plan. Eric Lashinsky has written a really good comprehensive plan. I mean, the Planning Commission should be commended for getting that plan to you. I know there's still work and there's some room for improvement, but right now it really works. We're anxious to get it adopted so we can start applying it. But that plan, we open it up, it's right there on the map, the list of the areas. Now we're doing the next level of more detailed planning. And this is not planning that deserves a community planning effort or hiring consultants. We're not doing that. This is just what we need to do internally to be prepared to advise the Planning Commission, Board of Appeals, HBC, et cetera.
I meant that as sort of a softball question, so we can all realize how important that is. Yesterday at Transportation Committee, you didn't really hear that from, you didn't really hear that these projects are in line with the comp plan. These are, they're with the comp plan initiative, and, this is, but this, great.
Yeah. This is one way that we're operationalizing the comprehensive plan, bringing it to life.
Right. It's not like it's a specification or anything, but it's in line with the vision of the comp plan and the goals of the comp plan and priorities of the comp plan.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, when we're looking at a geographic area and thinking through how does this area develop amongst a growing city that has a broke city plan that's in many respects taken out of a European context and it's grown, and we've sort of
we know that
lost that
one.
with sort of American suburban, one of the edges, How do we realize the goals of the comprehensive plan when these areas are going to be redeveloped? The only way we can really do that as planners is to think through what it actually looks like. Be engaged on the site, understand it, draw things, understand what it looks like, and look to the comprehensive plan for guidance. But it's not, that's different than saying, we've done the plan for the developer and you have to build what we're drawing. Because we're not drawing plans, we're drawing the essence of it, what's essential, like the setbacks, the view sheds, where parking generally should be located on a site like this. What does a development of the seafood market do in terms of pedestrian access from the neighborhoods that live on the other side of, that are located on the other side of Forest Drive? And if so, where does that shift our pedestrian crossings? And when we think about that, then we realize we need other things that have to come along with this. So then the developer delivers that community benefit as part of the project because we've thought through the process.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make it sound like we're doing the plan for a developer. That's not our job, but we're doing the planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have just the property for you to look at, Monticello and West Street. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
1 minute.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring up an issue that I'm sure we're going to be spending a lot of more time talking about is now that the council has the comp plan. But my experience with the past comp plans is that it is primarily used by developers for the justification of the project they want to do. And so I'm encouraged by your statement that we're developing the concept of where we want things to go.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure I can quite identify yet from the comp plan. Maybe it's there and I just haven't been able to register it, where the comp plan thinks it wants to go. Now, I know one of the things that it's saying is let's get rid of commercial and have everything mixed use, which implies to me the new development is going to go in commercial areas. And that remains to be seen how that's going to develop. And you'll hear this from me a lot. I want to see in the comp plan a lot more attention given to the after effects of new density. There's kind of been an assumption, and I've heard it expressed at the Planning Commission and by colleagues, that if we make things more dense, it will cause better transit. And I would point to Northern Virginia or California and say, no, it doesn't cause better transit. So I'm very concerned about how we're going to address the after effects of new density. Mm-hmm. And it is, if it's in there, it's not hitting me in the face. So when we get into, but again, okay. I'm looking forward to a planning document that isn't just a document that only comes off the shelf. And by the way, for this planning document, we better have a very substantial shelf. It's a weighty document. But I don't want to see it only mentioned when somebody's coming in with their new project saying, this is consistent with the comp plan here, 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 and here. I want us to be the ones that are directing, and I mean us all collectively, the planners and the policymakers, that we're directing where it needs to go and how it needs to happen. So that's a goal to be obtained, I think. And I'm glad you're on board because I think you can help us do that.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of, let's look at the organizational chart real quick. Let's turn our attention to that. I mentioned the box to the left of the director, the zoning administration, already. To the right, departmental operations. Right now, this is Maria Brown. Her title is actually assistant to the director. And she's so much more than that in our department. And it's kind of a joke. She's not my assistant. She is the chief of operations, and I suspect once the code or the position classification study is completed, her title will be officially changed to something like chief of operations. Wow. She manages staff, and the staff are dispersed throughout the administrative staff throughout the other divisions. One division that you might not see on this organizational chart is the community development division. Remember, this is the chart proposed. This is what we're working on now. This reflects how things are being changed. So there is a community development division, and it's headed up by Teresa Wellman. Teresa has filed her papers to retire this spring. And when she retires, my vision, and hers too, actually, we've been coordinating what would be best, is that rather than hiring her replacement as a chief, we would hire a planner that does community development. And by that I mean administers the Community Development Block Grant Program, but does so much more in terms of community development planning. So it's broad-based and deals with not just the physical development of the community, but the community development of Annapolis. And that position really works well in comprehensive planning. Right now, we have a comprehensive planning division of two, Eric Lashinsky and Casey Ortiz. That's not quite a division. And that's why we're not able to be responsive to dealing with the zoning text amendments, all the other code requirements that have implications across the board. We simply don't have the staff, and the staff we do have are focused on a lot of other things. Our plan is that the next community development person will be more of a junior level planner. We'll eliminate a higher paid position, we'll disperse that salary among other staff in our department and broaden our staff. So it's kind of a cost-effective way of building our capabilities too. So that's why you only see 5 divisions here rather than 6 that we currently have. If we go to comprehensive planning, starting on the left, you'll see a senior planner position highlighted in yellow. That means it's a proposed new position. And the proposed budget that I've provided to finance in the city administration has that as a proposal for a new position. That would be a senior planner that's equivalent to that's an A14, A15 type of position. And you'll see the community development specialist, which is really just a replacement for Teresa. But it'd be a new position. But essentially, it'll come along with the elimination of her position. In historic preservation, I'm proposing that we hire a part-time administrative or assistant chief of preservation. And the city has long had that position in place. It's just that somewhere along the line, when John Tower was promoted to chief, they never backfilled his position. And then when the staff thought they had it in the budget, it was actually not in the budget. It wasn't filled in the year that they could have filled it, then it was removed. So we want to put it back in the position. We really need that if we're going to do more than just focus on the historic district. We want to focus on history generally and historic preservation. We need more staff resources. Even a part-time person is what we need now. And then under the Development Design Review Division, that's the division that is now called Current Planning. But we want to come up with a name that actually reflects what the division does, and this is what the staff likes. It's what I like. You see there are 2 gray boxes. Those are planners that are funded now. One of those planners is a part-time contract position. So that contract will fall by the wayside when we hire someone full-time. So these positions don't need to be funded. They've been in our budget. They're in this year's fiscal budget. And we hope to hire them by the summer. I'm hoping that we'll have perfect alignment with when students are graduating from grad school and planning to start their first jobs with us. Inspections and permits. The permits administrator, that's highlighted yellow. That's Lakita Wimbley's position because I've proposed that that job be promoted to a higher level of prominence and management in our office. And so that has a budget implication, but really that hinges on the classification study. And so we have to wait for HR to signal that that's acceptable. I think I'm hopeful that the consultants that are doing the study will see things my way on that. And then there's a proposal for another architectural plans reviewer, building plans reviewer, as I mentioned earlier. And then in the economic development, right now we have the economic development division of the chief, Stephen Rice, and the SMBE liaison, Hope Stewart. And we don't have an SBE program, at least not yet. But we have a person that's tasked with administering this. And we've actually been struggling with this. That is really a procurement type of position, a purchasing, general services type of position. And we'd love to be able to use Hope's skills in economic development, policy, research, meeting with businesses, formulating economic development policy, and have that position be placed somewhere else in city government, like in perhaps the general services department or some other department that might be created in the future. But really, it's a procurement position. And I think we're really lucky to have Hope Stewart, and I really want to have her in our work. So you could think about these plans that we're doing, that Tom Smith is leading. There's an economic market reality to all of that. Tom doesn't have that skill necessarily. He has some experience, but wouldn't it be nice to have Stephen Rice doing a quick market study? I could do the market study too, but evaluate what the uptake of that is to see if it's really a legitimate project within today's marketplace. This division can provide a lot more services to the city council than we currently do in terms of research, development, information analysis, and that's what we hope to do if we can free Hope up to do more economic development work. So that's the organizational chart that we're working from now, and that we hope to achieve through the budget years ahead. In terms of overall work program, I just want to highlight some things for 2024. We're beginning a quarterly email newsletter. The first issue will be out in April. This is an idea of Casey Ortiz. We have well over 1,400 emails of people that participated in just comprehensive planning stuff. We just want to keep them informed about the projects that are percolating through the system, what our priorities are, what the Planning Commission might be doing, and then maybe just sort of, did you know that Lakita was just promoted? Or, we just want to build the trust factor. The comprehensive plan adoption, we hope that we can have that adoption in the nearer term, as soon as possible, actually, because it frees us up from a policy standpoint to do other things. I don't want to take away from the time. It's going to get done when it gets done. But that is on our work program. We hope to achieve that in 2024. Reform of the APF ordinance. It's complicated. If you have to, on our side of things, trying to administer an APF through multiple departments in city government, I can assure you it's very complicated. Start multi-year zoning ordinance update. As soon as we get the comprehensive plan done, we'd like to begin making tweaks to the zoning ordinance and not hire a big consulting firm to take years to do it from scratch, but allow us to work with you to get ahead of the zoning issues, to participate with you and write zoning code that implements the comprehensive plan. And I imagine this is going to be a multiple year project where regularly you will see us and staff report to you with suggested changes to the code and gradually reform the code over time. And it will be informed by the planning work we're doing internally. So it won't be totally abstract. You'll see why we are proposing that setbacks be 10 feet rather than 35 feet in a certain zone, because we'll have done the work to justify it, rather than relying on a consulting firm from outside to propose that. We want to build our capabilities in-house to help you. We want to get the rental rehab program up and running. That was funded in last year's budget or the current budget, but it's taken a lot of time and coordination and negotiation between the interests that are involved in that, but we're ready to go. In fact, Mitchell just prepared a flyer for us. It's about to hit the streets. So we're going to have a rental rehab program operational probably within a month. start multi-year, continue efficiency improvements in permitting, mentioned that already, customer service training, and then Alderman Arnett, you mentioned getting ahead of the drafting process, just code. That's what we want to do. We want to be in a position where we can come to the meetings of the standing committees with real ideas, meet with you all in advance, actually propose changes rather than just reacting to help with, after things are already well along in the pathway. And I think that about does it for me.
Alderman Tierney had a hand up first, and Alderman Arnett.
In this org chart, who would be handling the Hacker redevelopment, which is a really...
Oh, the CNI project?
And future Hacker redevelopment.
Yeah,
That's a big
okay.
deal.
Yeah. So a lot of us would be. I mean...
It's comprehensive.
So myself and Eric Lashinsky and Teresa Wellman now are in coordination with the mayor's office and with HACA in the sort of moving from this CNI proposal that was just approved by HUD, moving that toward the next stage of actual development. But HACA is really driving that because it's their property and it's their project. But any project that comes out of that process would have to go through the normal review and approval development review process, which would then fall into the development design review track, just like any other development.
Like any other project, yeah.
And then that, once it got through that stage, it'd be in the building permits section, inspections and permits, and we'd be reviewing the building plans in detail too, which is the inspections and permits division under John Manassa.
Yep. So follow the same process.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Alderman Arnett?
So one of my great regrets is that I used to go all the time to the Annapolis Business Leadership Meeting, and it was a great roundtable of representatives from all of the different, like the Esports Business Association and SOFO and so on. And at that meeting, for quite a while, a gentleman by the name of Brian Sears was there, who was wanting to start up a tech incubator kind of thing to attract tech businesses to the city. As I say, I haven't been to those meetings for a while now because the Dem breakfast is heating up and we're having all kinds of politicians, and we are politicians. But it did strike me that that is an important thing for us to do. I don't know where the management of the Main Street program and the Arts District program are, but it seems to me that's in that same area there. I've been doing a lot of reading about the housing experiment in Minneapolis. In fact, I have some papers to send to all of you. I'm pulling a Brooke Shaw tomorrow. I'm going to dump a bunch of papers on you. But one of the things, in that set of series, they say there's two things that really affect housing prices in metropolitan areas. One of them is amenities, and we certainly have amenities in the city and space, but the other is high wage, high salary jobs. And when you have high salary jobs available and amenities, housing prices are going to be high. And that is the market, and it's very hard to get around it. But it does seem to me that if we want to have attracting more businesses, that what Brian Sears was talking about, and you might want to talk to Hope about that, is something that we need to do here to attract new jobs. And then I really don't know what's happening. The Main Street program has become the Annapolis Partnership, and that seems to be going up and down. I'm not even sure who heads it up right now. And the Arts District, they do come and report at the Friday morning meeting. And I think that's another good idea, and it's stuff that we worked on the council to get both of those established. In fact, Ellen Moyer had to plead with Governor from, who was the governor then? I can't think of, the Irish,
O'Malley?
pardon?
O'Malley?
O'Malley, yes. To reopen the Main Street program because it was closed. And he reopened it so we could get the last Main Street program that's been approved by the state. And those are all part of what makes Annapolis as cool as it is, you know, the dining under the stars, the chocolate festival kinds of things. And that all comes out of that Main Street program and Arts District. So the bottom line here is that I do think that those are important planning functions and important city functions, and I'm not sure whether Stephen and Hope are enough for all of the things on their plate. So I'm just putting that out.
Thank you. Any other comments? I would just like to stress, I think, for the council and for all of us, you know, I'd say one of our highest priorities is Harbour House and Eastport Terrace and CNI.
Right.
And we all understand that when properties haven't been invested and under-maintained for decades, 50, 60-year-old properties, that people start to give up hope. And we really think that this project is going to be transformative. And so, you know, I've taken you, we've been to the site, both sites, Spa Road and to that site, to just say, you know, whatever we can do to expedite that process, and so that it doesn't sit on the city's side, that so we can say we've done everything we can do for this, you know, and if it is on the other side. But, you know, we're ready to take that up the chain to get as far up in HUD to say, you know, we need to move now. We want to put this behind us and, you know, make sure that the residents' future is, you know, a lot brighter than it is in those properties. So for legacy, I don't know, I'm sure all of us agree that that'd be something that we would all be the most proud of that we could do. Yeah.
And we've got that message, and our values are completely aligned with that. And you know that Eric and Teresa and I are on that, and have been working with Mike Malinoff. We expect that some resolutions and other things are going to be packaged up pretty soon to shore up that, so that HACA has the assurance it needs that we have the things in place they can release the RFPs and get the developers reviewing these redevelopment projects right away. So fingers crossed. It was just good news that HUD approved the plan, and there's a meeting set up already to understand what the approval means for us. And I think it's going to be next week or first week of March, I believe, that the meeting is being scheduled now.
Thank you. Anything else? We're going to give you a round of applause because we think you're great. Right, appreciate you. Anything else for good order?
If I might. We had a wonderful ceremony. Some of us were there at Carr's Beach for the Moore's property, and I need to put my mic on. It was one of those truly feel-good events. It was so good to be there and see so many happy people. Most happy of all, I believe, besides you, Mayor, was Vince Leggett. And he was certainly the underlying force. But we got to figure out ways. The Capitol was there and other media, but this is a big deal. I mean, this is huge for the city, and we ought to feel good. We had a small part. There were a lot of players, but we ought to feel good about what we're getting done there. And it was great, and thank you for your leadership, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, if you get the brochure, if any of you have it, that you can scan a QR code on the front, and there's a short video that's been done about that. But, you know, that land is the last slither of land to tell that story of a piece of property that was on the Green Book. And there's so many great stories. And I spoke and said, look, we're a historic town. We tell lots of historic stories, but they seem to come from one place and be about one era. When, you know, this state capital continues to make history, we made history with our governor now, and this amazing music history for 3 decades. The coolest people on the planet played here. I told everybody at the beach today, imagine if Jay-Z or Kanye, you know, or Drake came and played here. Wouldn't you all think that's amazing? And that would never happen. But back then, people that were of that caliber, of that generation, came and knew where Annapolis was, and you know, really, you know, would have been an amazing thing to experience, you know. So we might get to experience it in a hologram form, in something that we do in this. It'll be up to this council to design what that centre looks like, and the next mayor, whoever that's going to be. But you know, we own the land now. We're going to have a great waterfront property, just like the new Waterfront Welcome Centre, that we can really showcase Annapolis from. And it wouldn't have been possible without all the effort of the support of the council. So it was a great team effort, but it was really driven by the city. And we were very lucky to get the support of the last governor. We clearly have the support of this governor, the county executive, and all the people that helped us on the way. But it's been real money, you know. We're talking, you know, $500,000 the city put in, but we're nearly at 10 million already, and the visitor centre will be 5 million. We got that great earmark from Cardin. We're going to get the beach rebuilt before we leave office, so we'll get to experience that phase of it. It's going to be a very natural park because it has to be, because of the restrictions on it. But the more property is a real kicker for the project, because we can do something really fabulous and architectural there. We can rehab the piers, and it'll be a place that we can get on a boat from City Dock, an electric ferry, and be there in 12 or 15 minutes, you know.
Where would you all stand?
The Parks and Rec did this amazing cleanup. I don't know if you've ever been around the property, but it was in bad shape. It looks like a meth lab. But they cleaned it up, and we had it was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful.
Can you talk about the Juneteenth?
I didn't know about that. So I just learned about it today.
But we should put it on our calendars, because there's going to be like a, what did she call it? A party, like a reunion on Juneteenth there on the property. And I think Rosalind did a phenomenal job.
She did.
Today with all of the dignitaries who were there. And Mr. Mayor, they all gave you the kudos that you deserve.
Thank you.
You know, targeting each of them individually, sometimes riding your bike to their homes to knock on the door with your book on Little Willie. And I don't know whether you all have read it. I read it when you mentioned it a long time ago. But they are all 1,000% in.
Right.
You know, and that was your work. So, you know, big kudos to you for your vision and your ability to bring the right people together with the right dollars.
Yeah.
And I would suggest Franio does Bands in the Sands. I think we should have a city council in the Sands meeting at the beach.
But Julian has been taking testimonial from old timers that used to go there. You girls are too young, of course, so you wouldn't understand.
I have pictures of myself with my mom and her sisters and my cousins on the beach.
So it would be great to get some people that actually went there. It's only a small site. We didn't want to scare the neighbours by making it sound like there's going to be some huge party, but some beautiful event, but especially to get some of those old timers. Even one of the events we did, we had a great jazz guy there playing for one of the fundraiser things we did there, just with the water in the background. It's so fantastic, yeah.
And Jay-Z does have connections to Maryland. So, you know,
Give me his number. Give me his number.
He does have connections.
For good order, I just wanted to also point out on CNI, Will is spearheading a trip to a CNI development. There's a Delaware one, and we'll probably just do a Baltimore one. So we're going to get to see some CNI in action. So I know we've done a couple of trips that some of you have had a chance to go on to see redevelopments that that are good models for us. I've never been to a redevelopment. I've been to some great redevelopments in DC and Ellicott City and Baltimore, but I've never been to an actual CNI redevelopment. So there should be some outreach coming to you pretty soon to coordinate some dates that you can go on it, because I think it's important for city councillors to go on it, planning and zoning staff, or Hacker residents, Hacker management. We did probably 20-person trip before. We'll probably do a 20-person trip this time. So any of you that can be available, let me know. Thank you. Alderman.
I don't need a passport to go to Delaware. I'm good.
All right. We don't have to take a vote on this. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.